All right, we will go ahead and get this started. First off, I'd like to thank anybody for joining us tonight. Tonight, we're pleased to have the opportunity to speak to the head coach of Notre Dame, Kevin Corrigan. And for those that are new to lacrosse, Notre Dame has won back-to-back national championships this past 2 years, and Coach Corrigan was named Coach of the Year the past 2 years. Coach, I know you have a busy schedule as you guys are preparing for Georgetown this coming weekend, and just want to thank you for taking the time this evening.
Of course, Mike. Happy to be here with you.
Awesome. So, listening on the call is a mix of players, parents, coaches that all participate in the Illinois Boys Youth Lacrosse Association, which is basically the top youth program in Illinois. And some of the kids have, submitted questions, and I just think it's really cool for you to take some time for then gain some access to you and so forth. I'll, just to kick it off here, when I look through your roster, you've got, almost 20 different states represented, on your roster, with three. We'll take pride that we've got three from Illinois and many kids from the Midwest. And, just curious, what your thoughts are on, recruiting. I know, traditionally people that are new to sport only think of, Maryland and New York as being the hotbeds, and, would just love your, interpretation of how lacrosse is spread and how you guys have gone about recruiting.
Yeah, and listen, I think we're a reflection of the growth of the game, right? I mean, it's amazing. But we made a decision a long time ago when we got out here. First looking around at we were at the edge of the lacrosse universe, right? I mean, we were there was us and there was Air Force a little farther west of us, and we said, all right, we can either be considering ourselves on the outside looking in or on the edge looking out. And we decided we have it just makes more sense for us to be on the edge looking out, right? Let's be the guys that are the first ones to get the best players to come out of California and Texas and Arizona and Colorado and wherever, and we're still going to recruit those guys from Baltimore and the guys from Long Island and the guys from Philadelphia and those guys, but we're also in closer proximity to these other kids. And if we get the right mix of all those guys, then we hopefully are getting the right mix of not just kind of the geographical diversity, but the idea that we got athletes who are still have most of their growth in front of them in the game, right? They haven't played the competition on a day-to-day basis that a kid in Baltimore has. And a lot of times that's why that kid in Baltimore is where he is as a player, is he's, from the time he was 10 years old, he was playing really good players and had really good coaches. And a kid in California, he might be lucky if he had two really challenging matchups a year, much less every day in practice against a guy who was really good, right? And so the growth potential for a guy like that's huge if he has a feel for the game and a sense of the game that he can develop, right? Because not everybody does, right? That's not a given talent. So anyway, that's how we looked at it, Mike. And as a result, over the whole time I've been here, we've tried to be really open. I mean, the first kid I recruited from California, the kid named Joe Manutoli. Joe was playing in Marin County outside of San Francisco, and I said, man, this kid is super quick, and if we can, figure out how to harness that, right, we might have something there. And that was like the beginning of us saying, let's pick these athletes off from the outside and see what we can do, right? So just a different way of looking at it, but I think over the years, more and more people are looking at it that way.
Awesome. Obviously you mentioned athleticism, you talked about speed. I mean, that just brings up, a good topic of multi-sport athletes. Obviously, Jordan Faison, was obviously, pretty well known,
The poster child right now for that, right?
absolutely. And I just, one of the things, obviously, like a lot of the a lot of people are involved in club sports, and there's a want to maybe specialize in just one sport. But how much do you see being a multi-sport athlete actually helping the kids become just a better athlete versus a lacrosse player?
Well, I think there are two realities that you have to face when you look at that, right? The first one is not everybody can do that, right? Not and that's where a lot of kids get trapped in this idea of what you're saying. Everybody's saying, "Oh, you can only do it in one. You only have time for one. You can only, and there are kids who can do it in multiple sports. There are also a lot of kids who can't, right?
Mhm.
They need every moment in their sport that they can get. And so having a real honest evaluation of yourself and your potential is a big thing. Because one of the things that I tell kids who are trying to do multiple sports is you can't use the fact that you're doing multiple sports as an excuse for why you're not something,
Mhm.
right? In other
Yeah.
words, if your stick skills aren't good enough, spend more time with the stick. Don't say, well, it's because I play football and basketball. Well, you may play football and basketball, but like if you can't make a free throw, you're not a very good basketball player. And if you can't handle the ball in lacrosse, you're not a very good lacrosse player. As the levels go up, right? And as you get better. So either put that time in and don't have the excuse, or narrow your focus and do the sport that you're best at, right? So I
Yeah.
love two sport athletes. I don't think there's anything better. I want a kid who I'd like every kid on our team to be a two sport athlete, right? But I also want them to be great athletes who didn't ever use one sport as an excuse to why they weren't better in the other one, and were willing to put in that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, when you guys are evaluating, your possible recruits, what are some of the other things that you look at besides just like, like lacrosse and maybe the skills, like maybe leadership, coachability, personality? One of the things that obviously sometimes the kids don't realize is how much you guys look at what goes on the sidelines or off the field or how they interact with their parents. Just curious thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can overstate that stuff because you don't really have so much insight into a guy and like what kind of a leader is he, but you certainly trust the judgment of people that you trust, right? So if I called you about a kid and said, "What kind of kid is he?" Your opinion is going to matter to me. It's going to matter on whether we move forward with that kid, right? If I don't know the coach, um, it's of less value, quite honestly, right? One of the things, yeah, and you can't look at a kid, you can't watch a kid play in the scenarios that we see kids play. You can't watch them and say this kid's a good leader or this kid's not a good leader. That I'd be giving myself credit for something I don't have the ability to do, right? What I can tell you though is, does that kid have a motor,
Mhm.
right? Does that kid play hard? Does he play hard because he's in a big game in front of college coaches? Does he play hard because the game is tied and there's a chance to win? Or does he play hard because he doesn't play any other way? Because he's a guy who plays hard.
Mhm.
That's the guy I want.
Yeah.
I don't want the guy who situationally knows how to turn it up and play hard, because shoot, everybody can in some situation, right? And I want the guy that you have to tell him, settle down, big boy. You're doing great. But I mean, it's playing hard to me is it's something you almost take for granted. But the guy that really plays hard in every circumstance, right? The last game of the day at a tournament that doesn't matter, in a game that's not for the championship. It's that we lost in the second round, so we're in the back draw, and it really doesn't matter. But he plays hard. Why? Only be one reason, because he's a guy who plays hard. Well, that's a guy I can work with, right? That's a guy who's willing to be taught, who's willing to stay after and do extra work, who's willing to develop his game, because working hard is just who he is, and that's a huge thing for us. That probably the number one thing that we look for, Mike, is we want to know that our guys love the process of being a lacrosse player. They love the game. They love playing. They love to compete. They love, I mean, all of that is so important because it's a long 4 years of college, and there's sacrifices that have to be made. And if every time one of those things comes around, a kid is going, gee, I don't know, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? well, eventually they're going to be enough that he's going to choose he didn't want to do that he's going to miss. He's going to not be as good as he could have been if he was just a guy who said, I'm, I've already chosen. I'm doing this, so I'm going to do it as hard and as well as I can every single day because that's just how I operate, right? So that's I think a huge thing, and again, that's something I can see from the sidelines. I can't see leadership from the sidelines. I can learn that from coaches. I can learn that from talking to people in his school or whatever. I can't see. Really in a lot of ways, like it's great to say, like I watched a kid who does, does he let his mom carry the bag off the field or does he carry the bag off the field? I mean, but how often do you really see that? I mean, how often do you really, but I can see a kid who plays and I can see him when he's competing because that's what I'm there to watch and that's what I'm watching. And I see that and I see that kid that really competes and I say that's the kind of guy we want. It's not gonna look if he's no good and he competes like crazy. I say that's a great kid. I
Yeah.
hope he finds a home somewhere. He'll have a lot of fun playing lacrosse. But if he's a really good player and he competes like that and he is just always on like that, then I say okay, that's a guy who's going to keep getting better and he's gonna that's an infectious thing within a team as well, and that's gonna make other people raise
Yeah.
their competitive level.
Yeah, so obviously, as somebody that spends time coaching, younger athletes, I mean, I can't tell how many times where I've had parents like complain and be like, oh, so and so, his teammates weren't at practice, all that kind of stuff. I will do a shout out to one of your players, Nate Switchenberg. It didn't matter who showed up to practice, who was in his line, who he was going against, if it was raining, if it was good weather. He was there for every single whistle, and obviously, he's on your roster, and obviously he's getting some reps. So, I mean, again,
Yeah,
an
like
Illinois guy.
honestly, Mike, you couldn't have named a better kid. And if you were, it might be another Chicago kid, Wilma Harris. Those two guys just come every day. They compete like crazy. They never take a rep off. And man, are they great teammates and great guys to have on your team. We love both of those guys.
That's awesome. Love it. One of the things that I know that with just the way that Notre Dame has started playing over the past couple of years with first with Ryer Garnsey, the Kavanaugh brothers, how do you kind of allow sometimes guys to have that like creativity? I know originally when I was a younger coach, it was like, no behind the backs, you're not allowed to do this. And obviously, it seems like that's when people talk about where is the direction do you see the game going, that allowing the players to maybe have creativity. How have you maybe evolved as a coach to kind of allow guys to do that?
That's a great question. And I probably don't know that I have enough self-awareness to answer that as well as I probably should. But I will tell you this, uh, creativity, intuitiveness, um, and the skill set to pull it off.
Hmm.
Very importantly, the skill set to pull it off. You have to practice these things. You don't just whip this stuff out in the middle of a game. Um, that is a huge part of our game. It's one of the wonderful things, quite honestly, about our game, right? And it's one of the listen, I'm 5'7", you're 6'3", right? We play the same sport, we both love it, right? There's everything in between, I mean, yeah, Robbie Snyder from Loyola High School is 5'6", 245 pounds. Sorry, Robbie. I don't know if that's a low or high estimate on his weight. But I'm gonna tell you, the guy was a great lacrosse player, a great lacrosse player. Not a, what I mean, not a good lacrosse player, right? Because he had unbelievable skills. He had a great sense of the game. He had an imagination, an intuitiveness, a creativity that allowed him to do things that other people on the field couldn't do.
Hmm.
And so guys who were, 6'3", 215, run like the wind and do everything else, they couldn't guard a guy like that.
Hmm.
They didn't know what to do with a guy like that because and that's one of the wonderful things about our game. And so I hope I've always had I will say I've always had an appreciation for that about our game. I've always thought that was important and recognized the value of that. I'm not sure I ever coached as in a way that allowed it to happen to the same degree that I do now but I also have guys who are just so capable of doing it. And I mean Jake Taylor, if Jake Taylor scores 7 goals in the course of a practice for us, there might be 2 of them that look the same,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
There's a quick stick. There's a behind the back. There's a low to low. I mean, I mean, he just does things, and it's like, but he practices all that stuff. He's really good at all that stuff, and now his imagination and his creativity and his understanding of the game all come together to make him a unique guy, right? And so yeah, the point being my permissiveness of allowing that stuff probably I was late to that game. I always had an appreciation for it. I just might not have been as permissive as I am now. I'm,
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
can
patient
imagine.
with guys like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can imagine with like film session and you guys like evaluating, was that a good shot? Was that not a good shot? And then, I mean, over the past couple of years, like you mentioned, with some of your players having success doing it, it's kind of like, all right, I got to kind of like, I can't really harp on it because they scored, they got it done, and it seems like I know for myself as a goaltender. I mean, there was many guys that scored on me behind the back, and like honestly, I didn't even expect it. It was like kind of an unexpected shot. And it seems like that creativity is leading to a lot of goals these days. Yeah.
No, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think it's making it harder and harder, and particularly harder on goalies. Like you're
Yeah.
saying, if that ball, like, listen, we all love the overhand shot because a well taken overhand shot has multiple release points and everything else. But for a goalie, like it's you you got to read every high to low, low to high, behind the back, and
Yeah.
around the world. I mean, man, good night. Good. You're and you got like a millisecond to evaluate that and do it. That's tough, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those younger kids on the call, we're not saying to just start going out and do that, but I mean, obviously practice. And I think coaches sometimes, allowing the kids to have some creativity, I think is a positive thing. And like you mentioned, that's sometimes what's attracted kids to lacrosse versus some other sports is that uniqueness of the game. So
No
yeah,
question. No question. That's
awesome.
a you think about that from a recruiting standpoint, right? Like the next generation of guys, the next class or two of recruits, they're looking at our team and they're saying, "Oh, I can be imaginative on that team. I can do some things on that. I don't have to. I'm not going to be restricted in what I can do." And listen, I've long been. I hope I'm known as a guy who harps on fundamentals and you know what I mean is very you adamant about those things being important. So I also hope people are looking at the game going, "Oh, wow, look, they also do a lot of creative stuff, a lot of imaginative stuff. I like that. The mix of those two things, the marriage of those two things is where the magic is, right?"
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just kind of going back from that and then going back to some of the things you talked about, what you look for in a player. We talk about like, guys that want to train, that want to do extra reps. I would assume that a lot of the guys, they're going out and doing extra reps on their own, hitting the wall, hitting the rebounder, spending time at the field, even when you guys don't have it scheduled. And I think that's typically an important thing for, college players, all players. Like in a way, they're preparing for practice, and then, obviously practice prepares them for the gameplay and so forth. How much like emphasis do you guys, need to make to the players? Do you feel like a lot of the guys that, are playing at your level are doing that on their own?
No, it's interesting, Mike. As a team, as a program, we probably do less right now than not only virtually every other program out there, but than we used to do,
Hmm.
right? Because one of the things that I found was the more that we demand of them, the less that they do on their own.
Interesting.
And so much of what they really come to love and appreciate and again where their own imagination, the guys who are seeing the game in their head, they're working on things that they would never work on in practice, and we don't have time for them to work on in practice, but they'll spend that time. But if we're wringing every second out of them, then they're not doing that, right? They're
Yeah.
like, oh, I got other things to do. I don't feel like I'm tired of lacrosse right now. And so one of the things that certainly I would tell you that in my time as a coach, I we do less now than we've probably ever done, and
Wow.
I believe in it because I believe that a part of it is we're recruiting guys who love the game. They recognize that there's this 4 year opportunity for them to really maximize their ability, right? The pros are great, but right now the pros are 2 or 3 days a week for 4 months, right? Ours is a 9 month, you know,
Yeah.
like full time thing. It's really your opportunity in the game of lacrosse right now to maximize your ability and to see what you can become. And so many of our guys are excited about that possibility that I don't want to suck the enthusiasm out of that by making them practice so long and so hard that they're not staying after practice, right? Like
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, as a high school coach, or as a coach in the game at any level, really, if your team, like we have a really restrictive schedule in the early season because we have this beautiful indoor facility, which is awesome. We practice in shorts and t-shirts every day, so I'm not complaining in any way. But I am telling you, we have 2 minutes. I mean, excuse me, 2 hours for practice, not 2 hours and 3 minutes. 2 hours. That's it. Because the next team's coming on. They got their practice time, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times what that means is we don't have time after practice or before practice for guys to shoot around and do stuff. Today we have a game Saturday in Washington D.C. against Georgetown and being a Thursday we practiced a little bit shorter, to kind of make sure our guys are fresh athletically and ready to go. But when we finished practice today, almost no one left the field. We had another 20 minutes left, and the guys are like, do we have time, coach? And I'm like, yeah, we got to have 15, 20 minutes before the next team comes on. They're like, great. So almost no one left the field for the first 10, 15 minutes because they were, oh, it's great time. They wanted to work on something. They had something they wanted to do. They wanted to take some shots. They wanted to get some one-on-ones with a guy. They wanted to do an extra facing off. And that's great. If you end practice and the field is available and no one hangs around, then you need to look at yourself and go, are we winning the battle and losing the war? Are we, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if no
Yeah.
one wants to hang around and play some more, then we may be practicing too much. We may be trying, we may not be leaving open some time for them to say, "Hey, coach, come over here and I'm going to work on this with this guy. I want to, this one on one, like just watch this," because you don't get that time during a practice. You're trying to, keep everything going. Keep, for us, it's 53 guys. We've got to keep, busy accomplishing things and getting through
Yeah.
the stuff that we have to get through. And when I saw that tonight, I was like, well, if nothing else right now, we got that right. Our guys want to be here. They want to play a little extra. They want to get a little better in the time that they have. And I think that's it's a little bit of the canary in the coal mine, right? If you finish practice and everybody can't wait to get off the field and pack their bag and go home, then you might say, oh, we might have gone a little extra.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great takeaway there. We've got a lot of maybe kids and youth coaches that spend time maybe watching your games on TV or watching game film. One of the things that somebody wrote in is like, what are some of the things that maybe a young player, a young coach should like maybe watch besides just watching the ball? And some things that you feel like maybe you guys emphasize when you guys watch film and like you're not just actually watching the guy with the ball, you're watching the other guys, maybe like body language, where their sticks are. I don't know, some general things that maybe some kids can look out for.
It's funny, Mike, that you asked that question because we're playing Georgetown this weekend, and they have a very they have an offense that's very it's kind of a it's not scripted in any way, right? It's all read and react and in the moment and everything else. And when you first watch it, you're like, holy moly, what is going on here? And it's hard. And then you watch it more. So I told our guys, like, I need you to do two things. I need you to really watch what, enough of this that you get comfortable with the style of offense that they're playing because it's different than what a lot of people do. It's not
Yeah.
scripted. It's not, they're not, you're not going to, at any point, are we going to stop and identify a set that they're in because it's irrelevant what set they're in. They're going to move not according to what set they're in. They're going to move according to their rules, their principles, right?
Yeah.
So get used to that. But the other thing I said is after you've watched some film, go back and watch the same film and just put yourself in the shoes of one guy. Say, watch one guy. And what does he do, right? In the course of a possession. Because I said for our defensive guys, if you do that, you're going to see that, okay, ball came down the field. The guy I'm watching, he's on ball. His guy gives up the ball. He's adjacent. His guy cuts to the crease. He's the slide guy. His guy pops out the backside. He's the guy coordinating the slide and protecting the backside 2 versus 3 and communicating the recovery to the crease and who's going to do that. His guy's got the ball again and he's back on ball again. And it's like that is a whole different way of watching film to like put yourself in just one guy's shoe
Yeah.
and say, oh, what are all like because that's what I said is the challenge of playing Georgetown, I think, is that every time they come down the field, offensively, or defensively for us, you're going to be put in all these roles in all these situations, and that's the challenge. The challenge isn't that any one of them is so hard. The challenge is moving from one to the other, to the other, to the other, identifying them correctly, positioning yourself correctly, communicating to everybody around you correctly, and then executing what needs to be done. And that's not that hard the first time through. The second time through, it's harder. The third time through, it's really hard, and that's
Yeah.
what you got have to appreciate.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Obviously, as you alluded to, that's something that you guys were trying to instruct with the players going into this coming weekend and so forth. So, I know that obviously, we took up some of your time here. I really appreciate you spending time with everybody. I guess one of the last questions that I have for you is any kind of like last words of wisdom for kids that maybe they feel like they don't emphasize enough or maybe neglect as training opportunity, maybe youth players trying to become good high school players trying to become good college players. I don't know, any last words of wisdom for any of the kids that are out there?
Well, the first one is like listen, it's a passion play,
Hmm.
right? The whole thing is a passion play. Do it because you love it, and if you love it, do it. Don't feel guilty about it. Don't feel, like and so I just feel like sometimes it's like if it's really important to you, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, I'm gonna tell you the things in your life that you're gonna be most successful at are the things that you are most passionate about. And so it's okay that you're passionate about lacrosse right now. I'm not saying ignore your English homework or don't read that book you're supposed to read or whatever. I'm just saying it's okay to put time and energy into something, that's important to you and because it teaches you so many things about that are transitive to the next thing that you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
And for you and I, that's been lacrosse and stays lacrosse, right? But for most people, by the time they're a lot younger than both you and I, it's something else, right? Lacrosse is no longer part of their life, or it's a small piece of their thing while they move on to everything else that's more important. But there's nothing wrong with giving yourself over to that thing that you love and care about and you want to do well. And you teach yourself so many valuable lessons about how to do something well. So I'm a fan of that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Coach. Obviously, good luck this weekend against Georgetown, and good luck the rest of the season. And I know Patrick Mahomes was not able to do it, but hopefully you guys can go into the three-peat year. So,
My wife's upset about that. She was really rooting for the Chiefs. I'm like, I didn't even know you liked the Chiefs. She's like, I don't care about the Chiefs. I just want to see three-peats be a thing this year.
absolutely.
Hey, listen, How's UVM doing? We got
We're getting some
we have a
W's.
South Bend, we have a South Bend kid on the UVM team.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, my
Oh,
doctor,
Ezra, that's right.
Ezra,
Yes,
that's right.
Ezra. Yes, absolutely. He's a
Yeah,
former student
great
too.
kid,
So
great family, and I hope he's doing well. Hope him and the team have a good year.
absolutely. Well, I appreciate it, Coach. And yeah, it's good luck this season. And I'm sure many of the kids, I know myself, I'll be coming up to some of the next couple home games that you guys are having outside the rest of the season here.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Have a good night.